Hey friends, welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we've been studying this lesson, 3 cosmic messages. We're studying from lesson number 3, which is the everlasting gospel. And curiously, Monday's lesson has the same title, right? April 10th. It's the everlasting gospel. And basically, the concept here is the concept of timelessness, the timelessness of the gospel. It's an everlasting gospel. That's what's at the center of today's lesson. When we look at the Bible, we see that this contingency plan that God has in place for the fall of man, for sin, for salvation, it's been there for a very long time. We know that Jesus is called the Lamb that was slain since the foundation of the world. So what does that mean? That means that God, in his timelessness, in his atemporality, right? God is an atemporal being. Now, what that means is that God is greater than time. He is outside of time in the sense that he created time. But he inserts himself in time. He comes into time. He becomes temporal when he deals with temporal beings like you and me, right? So this plan has been there for a long time, since the days of eternity, the Lamb slain since the foundation of the world. And what that means is that God's grace is so great, so deep, so totally and completely encompassing that it has been there since the foundation. The lesson brings several texts, but the one that really caught my attention is Romans chapter 5, verse 6 through 8 that says, "For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." So that's where his love is demonstrated for us, that while we were still sinners, he died for us. The lesson brings the following idea. It says, notice 4 points that are brought in the passages of Romans. So this was just one of the 2 texts in Romans that are brought in today's lesson. And it says that we are justified freely by grace. Grace is a declaration of God's righteousness. Grace justifies those who by faith accept Jesus. And God's love was demonstrated for us while we were still sinners. Friends, one thing that we can never lose sight of is the fact that this is an everlasting gospel. The good news is forever. Can you imagine just in the days of eternity, after we've long left this horrible world, we will be called by God to be ambassadors of his, right? To be diplomats of God, if you will, to go out into the unfallen worlds, to go out to these other places where there are beings that are just, crazy to hear what we have to share. Because we are the only beings in existence in the universe that know what it feels like on our own life, in our own skin, right? In our own flesh. We're the only ones that knows what it feels like to receive forgiveness. We're the only ones that actually know, that truly know what it means to have God become our substitute. And so the everlasting gospel, it far outweighs the mere consequences here that we see in our everyday. It goes far beyond that. And so that's why the everlasting gospel and God's love will be the subject of our study for all of eternity. So I hope that this encourages you to not only study the lesson, but to apply the practical principles of the lesson. You'll see that the lesson has Bible verses, it has questions. And so really, they're simple questions. They're only meant to kind of confirm in your mind what you've studied. So I just encourage you to study your lesson, read the verses, fill out the questions so that you can know what the lesson's talking about and that you can share it with someone else. May God bless you, and I hope to see you here again for another Sabbath School Daily tomorrow.